sessions I'll be doing on an ongoing basis. It is something that has been on my mind for quite a while, and it is to create questions and answer sessions based on the amazing questions that we get in from the students around the world. So, tech recruiters, IT recruiters who are on our system, who've been on my training, they are essentially always asking questions, and then we spend time answering those questions as well, just to clarify things. But then I thought, why don't we formalize this and why don't we get this out to the broader audience as well? Which is where all of this is coming in. So let me just make sure that I am sending this out to you. Okay, looks like it's going out fantastic. Well, look, today's question is all geared towards the IT architects, and I just want to make sure that we get some of these things clarified. The question was, we keep seeing the IT architect role appear, but they're often in different environments, carrying out different activities, and it depends on whether they're in a development or an infrastructure situation where most of the disparities come in. Now, what the student in this situation, the recruiter, asked me to clarify was, what are the commonalities and differences, and they just wanted to have those explained. So let's go through that now. Now, of course, when they come into a software house, that you can see the title, it's going to have a lot of development background, and when you see the network side of things, there will be the title may be exactly the same. It might be kind of IT architect, and this is where in some cases you will actually trip up, because you will try and find architects that have had a little dabbling in one area, dabbling in another area. But we're on actually a very interesting point in time. We are in a situation where the wall has almost started to break down between software and networking. And so there is this whole idea, of course, of DevOps. But the confusion, if you ever find that you need to kind of really home in on whether the architect is solid in one area or the other, the confusion will disappear once you understand what the title anchors onto. And what I mean by that is, ask them the question, what is the end result that you're primarily focused on or have been primarily focused on in the past? So has it been applications? Has it been databases? Now, if their CV is more towards cloud type terminology and infrastructure type terminology, and networking where it's all about keeping uptime, then you know that that kind of delineation is starting to happen. You're beginning to understand that if it's on this side of things, they're not going to be very good on the infrastructure, whereas over here, they may be very good on the infrastructure, but really have no immediate relevant strength in the development side of things or interest in there. But there are, and here's the interesting thing, commonalities. So just by virtue of the fact that you are an architect, you are going to be interested in things like performance of any system that you're creating, okay? Scalability, availability, uptime. Of course, it's still going to be at the back of your mind. Security is an area that architects will always be building into their systems. Resilience is something that they've got to bring into place. So all of these terms like governance, governance is a huge area. Remember, these people are the strategic overlords of what is being created within an organization, be it software, be it infrastructure. And so, yeah, they will be able to lay down the frameworks, the high level frameworks that this organization is working to, in terms of creating a new system, an enterprise application, a new network. They will be able to lay down the strategic governance for that, but also they will be able to document that properly as well in a way that can be kind of carried through on a long-term basis and be referred to. So these people are at the top of their game. They will be people who understand which technology to go after. Now, this obviously depends on whether they're an enterprise architect, solutions architect, or just a technical architect. I don't want to say just, because technical architects are often, the most technically savvy, and sometimes even paid more than the other two. So the end result is very often the solution architect is the one that will get involved, or at least advise on the technology selection based on what is available in the market today, what the situation is in the market today, and what the needs of this particular project or implementation is. Very often, it will be the technical architect who will then come in and implement those things. But as I said, the boundary is starting to get dissolved. When you think about dev architects, you will now see very often microservices and Kubernetes on the CV. And this is a high likelihood that they are really into understanding the dev, but also the infrastructure. Because, of course, bear in mind, Kubernetes, microservices, these are all, let me just close my phone down here. These are all um, terms relating to DevOps, and you need to be absolutely familiar with that. So, um, when you see Kubernetes, when you see Docker, when you see microservices, you are looking at someone who is really required not to focus on one thing or the other, but they should have a real understanding of how the whole DevOps environment works. Development and operations, development and infrastructure coming together. That is DevOps. So more and more the architects are supposed to dissolve this boundary now. They will have an understanding of infrastructure. Well, they'll, in this situation, their leaning will be much more towards cloud, much more towards network terminology, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But when you're in this situation now, you still must have an understanding of how the infrastructure runs. So very often you launch an enterprise application, the application might be fantastic, but the infrastructure itself may not be suitable, it may not be capable of actually running that huge new application. We blame the application, but it could actually be the infrastructure that is the problem. Conversely, you could have an infrastructure that's really nicely set up, but those people must have a real understanding of the applications that are now being launched on that infrastructure, and will it have the latency? Will it have the capability of handling that level of enterprise application for that number of people within the organization? So it's really interesting when you think about development. The emphasis is going to be on things like code structure. They'll mention API design. They'll mention integration patterns, real-time event-driven architectures, and then DevSecOps within the pipeline will be mentioned as well. So you can see that this is all towards the development side of things. When you come over to the networking side of things, they'll mention topologies. They will mention medium, such as fiber, copper, whatever. Storage capabilities, server, disaster recovery design, cloud platform governance. So, just in that conversation, you'll be able to tease out whether this person has more leaning towards one or the other. Now, both require breadth. The specialist depth sits in a different place. So basically, they will all have the breadth and the way of approaching a new product with regards governance. Remember, these people have they've been on training with things like TOGAF and Zachman. They will have these frameworks that they work to. So TOGAF is a really good qualification in that sense. But what we're seeing here, of course, is terms like platform engineering now starting to appear, especially in the AI space. So senior developers, they understand what is bad infrastructure and how it affects an app's performance. But people on the infra engineer should now understand why app design choices matter and how they are rolled out on a particular hardware environment. So the best IT architects, in summary almost, they've hit a wall on one side and they've been forced to understand the other. So if you look at 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, these people had their stream. They knew where they were going to go. They were going to go down the development road. They were a developer, or they were a networking person, and suddenly they were specializing. But now suddenly they are forced to kind of mesh the two together and have a real appreciation of both of these worlds. And that is what is happening. So, in terms of CV signals, yes, I mentioned TOGAF, but of course, if you look at this, they will have cloud experience. They will have, as well as development, they'll have cloud experience. And they'll mention terms like Azure, Google Cloud, AWS, etc. Okay. What separates a senior individual from a genuine architect? Really, if you look at their past work, they've gone into architectural reviews, they've produced formal documentations, and they've actually made huge decisions. And key thing, as I mentioned earlier, they will define the strategic technical standards that other teams adopt too. Now, the big thing in the horizon, of course, is that the implementation of AI in a lot of organizations. So basically, now what we're looking at is I almost want to go on to that final slide and then I'll come back. But basically, what we're looking at in 18 months is that candidates who integrate AI into their traditional architecture understanding are the ones that really are you're going to compete to be hiring for these people in around the next 18 months because everyone is blending in AI and what they want are people who have an understanding of that AI layer. So what we talk about traditionally is of course understanding networking, understanding the whole compute power, understanding applications, but now we have another layer on top. And so you need to bring these into play. So things like, have you had exposure to vector databases? Vector databases, by the way, are databases that it's an AI system database that allows AIs to uh, not just search like the old SQL systems where it was a simple keyword search. Now with vector databases, you can look at context, wider context, or rather than just particular keyword searches. Much more nuanced, much more subtle, and allows the conversation to be much more broad when you speak to AI. So AI governance frameworks, machine learning pipelines, so data pipelines coming into here, and LLM integrations into past projects is a must. So I hope that's helped. That is all for this particular session, but that is the question of all of these different types of AI architects. How do you tell the difference between one who's more specialist in development and one is more specialist in in infrastructure? Well, you need to tease it out of them and just make sure that you understand from their CV and past performance as to whether their leaning is one way or the other. I hope that's helped. I shall see you on the next QA. Speak to you soon.